It's May of 1809, and Joseph Karl Rosenbaum really wants Joseph Haydn's skull. Haydn is the greatest composer in all of Austria at the time. He's still wildly influential to this day. Rosenbaum, his friend, is an accountant. But by night, Rosenbaum was obsessed with music, theater, and phrenology, or skull reading. Rosenbaum and many others believed that one could divine the source of a person's genius by examining the size, shape, and bumps of the skull. The skulls of musical geniuses like Mozart, Beethoven, and of course our old pal Haydn were especially interesting to phrenologists. So, as Haydn is wasting away, dying, and it becomes clear that his head may soon become available, Rosenbaum starts making preparations to get Haydn's head. It's because of Rosenbaum's obsession, as well as the bonkers story of what Haydn's head went through, that today we honor Joseph Haydn, iconic corpse. Now, before Rosenbaum could go about feeling up Haydn's head, he had to do some planning. It wasn't all quite legal, but hey, it's 19th century Europe, them be wild skull-stealing times. Anybody who's ever seen Ocean's 11, 12, or 13 knows you can't pull off a heist without a crew. Cue royalty-free heist music. Rosenbaum, the man behind the plan. Why'd he do it? To examine his friend's genius bumps and frankly just to have it, the skull, to keep in a pretty little display box he built for it. Johann Peter, Rosenbaum's number 2, a fellow phrenologist. Like any good second-in-command Brad Pitt to George Clooney heist buddy, Peter was at times all in on the plan, and at other times paranoid. He did help Rosenbaum with the test head, in which they tried out the flesh-removing techniques they would later use on Haydn's head. When the Viennese actress Elisabeth Reuss died in childbirth, Peter and Rosenbaum bribed a gravedigger to give them her head, which the two men giddily got to defleshing with quicklime. It worked, but rendered the skull brittle and prone to growing algae. Leopold Eckert, Rosenbaum's friend, confidant, and later his scapegoat. When Dr. Eckert learned of Rosenbaum's plan, he was happy to provide medical facilities and expertise in the secret methods to dissect and macerate Haydn's head. Jacob Demuth, a gravedigger at Hunstturmer Cemetery, where Haydn was buried. For a price, he not only supplied Haydn's head to Rosenbaum and Peter, but also the test head of Elisabeth Reuss. And that was Rosenbaum's 5, including Elisabeth Reuss and her head. With a plan in place, all he had to do was wait for Haydn to die, and die he did on May 31st, 1809. He was given a sparsely attended, modest funeral, hardly befitting a man of his status. Napoleon was invading Austria, Haydn was a devoted employee of the Austrian emperor, yada yada yada. He was not given the state funeral he probably would have received the year before. So Haydn was buried in an unremarkable grave at Hunstturmer Cemetery. But Joseph Karl Rosenbaum was so excited, you guys. Beside himself to get his hot little hands on Haydn's head, he went to the cemetery on the night he'd agreed upon with Demuth to collect his prize, but Demuth, the gravedigger, was nowhere to be found. He returned the following night, but again, no Demuth. At this point, Rosenbaum was not only worried that his shady deal was falling through, but he was also afraid he wouldn't have any quality time to spend with Haydn's head. Knowing that the defleshing of the skull would take at least a month, Rosenbaum wanted some alone time with his friend's rotting head for inspection and meditation. What, you think you're too good for your BFF's decaying severed head? Finally, on the third night, Demuth showed he had been recovering from a beating and handed off the head. Rosenbaum couldn't resist unwrapping the bundled head in the carriage. The thing was, it was June in Vienna and Haydn had been dead for a week. The stench of Haydn's decomposing head filled the carriage and Rosenbaum couldn't contain himself and threw up. But a little vomit? Small price to pay for Haydn's head. He handed off the head to Dr. Eckert, who got to work meticulously cleaning all soft tissue from the skull. After almost a month, Haydn's head was entirely bleached and clean and ready for Rosenbaum. His secret plan had worked. Rosenbaum placed Haydn's head in a special curtained display box topped with a golden lyre. All went well for the next 11 years. The skull definitely belonged to Rosenbaum, but he had joint custody with Peter, who sometimes kept it in his garden. Take that, garden gnomes. Rosenbaum, Peter, and Haydn's head settled into a well-to-do suburban bliss. That is, until Prince Nicholas Esterhazy got a case of the supposed as in he was supposed to have given Haydn a proper funeral and burial. When the Duke of Cambridge visited Prince Esterhazy, he was entertained by a performance of Haydn's The Creation. Marveling at the masterpiece, the Duke commented on how lucky Esterhazy was to not only have Haydn in his employ, but also to have his remains, which Prince Esterhazy did not have. So he felt bad. In order to move Haydn's corpse to the Esterhazy family crypt, Haydn was exhumed. However, workers very quickly noticed that where Haydn's head should have been was only his wig. The prince immediately launched an investigation into the whereabouts of Haydn's head, and despite the fact he hadn't exactly been secretive about possessing his friend's skull, Rosenbaum was pretty confident that he wouldn't be found out. That is until Peter, of garden gnome fame, comes to him basically freaking out, threatening to spill the beans. So with the police slowly turning their attention to Peter, Rosenbaum decided to take matters into his own hands. Taking one of his other skulls to the police, Rosenbaum and Peter claimed it was Haydn's, and then blamed the whole thing on Dr. Ecker, who conveniently had just died. Rosenbaum and Peter were like, "Oh, we're so sorry," and the police were like, "No biggie, thanks for being cool," and things were cool until they weren't. You see, Rosenbaum had handed over a skull of a much younger man, and it wasn't long before the police came a-knocking again. Now Rosenbaum is freaking out. He grabs Haydn's head and stashes it in his mattress and covers it with blankets. However, that looks suspicious, so he told his wife to get in bed with Haydn's head and be like, "Oh, I'm menstruating." Surely the police wouldn't remove a lady from her bed. And they didn't. But the prince was not having it. It's all like, "Dude, where's my skull?" And even offered Rosenbaum a bribe to hand over Haydn's head. So Rosenbaum relented. Or so it seemed. He actually hands over another skull he had in his possession, one more believably that of a 77-year-old man. The prince was happy, Rosenbaum was happy, and Haydn's body went to burial with someone else's head. Rosenbaum got to keep Haydn's head for the rest of his life, eventually willing it to Peter, who upon his death gave it to the Society for the Friends of Music in Vienna, as Rosenbaum requested. Haydn's head sat on top of a piano until the Esterhazy family got wind of this and demanded the skull be returned to them. Finally, after years of negotiating, the Esterhazy family was allowed to rejoin Haydn's head with his body in the Esterhazy crypt. The year was 1954, almost 150 years after Haydn's death. But you know what they say, 2 heads are better than 1. That dummy skull that Rosenbaum handed over never got removed from the tomb, so to this day, Haydn's tomb contains 2 skulls. Haydn's tomb has 2 skulls. And that, deathlings, is the tale of Joseph Haydn, iconic corpse head. What iconic corpses are you dying to hear about? Tell us in the comments, and maybe your wish shall be my command. This video was made with generous donations from death enthusiasts just like you.
Haydn's head.
Betham's head.
Haydn's head.
Betham's head.
Haydn's head.
Betham's head.